Hey, Dr. White. Thanks again. This is my first time on, so I'm really pumped about that. I got to meet you in Dallas, so that was really cool for the first time. But yeah, my question is just to get right to the point. I was listening to something. I know you're a big Jay Dyer fan, so I was listening
Yeah,
to an
big,
interview.
big, big Jay Dyer fan. Yeah,
Yeah, so I was listening to a thing that he was talking about, and of course, he mentioned you, and
yeah. I almost
with regards,
responded. I almost responded to it. I actually have the video you're talking about.
yeah.
In fact, Eli Ayala asked me to come on his program to talk about it, and I was just like, you know
Hmm.
what? I just got too much other stuff. I really got to. I actually exercise discipline, and because I love Eli, love to go on the program with him. He contacts. Sadly, when Eli contacts me, he'll tell you 8 out of 10 times I have to go. Sorry, bro. Um,
No, yeah,
yeah,
I get that. Basically, though, the long and short of it is just like, because obviously, I think it's abundantly clear that Romans 4, the whole argument is that that's when Abraham was justified. But then my question is like, how does that relate to Hebrews 11 and where it says that Abraham, by faith he went out when God called him and stuff? Did Abraham have some level of faith, but then he truly believed in the promise of the Messiah in Genesis 15, and that's where that's coming in? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
yeah. You've got again. This is where a Jay Dyer isn't going to allow for the canon of Scripture to determine the parameters for answering that question. He has external authorities beyond that. He's rejected sola scriptura, and so the traditions that he interprets as Eastern Orthodox. He's been a number of different things, but the traditions he embraces. And what's interesting is, just in passing, Orthodoxy is not nearly as cut and dried as Rome is on issues like this. But even within Roman Catholicism, you will see variation in interpretation. It's they're it's sort of like when the Council of Trent didn't actually end up determining formal material sufficiency. The original draft had one thing, and then it becomes watered down after that. Still, you still have a lot more specificity in the forensically thinking West than you do in the mystically thinking East. That's one of the things I think freaked people out by what I read a few weeks ago when I was in the RV. I read part of the Dionysian Corpus, read the whole mystical theology book, 5 chapters, and most everybody, Rich was saying, everybody in the chat channel was completely lost. It was like, what's going on here? Because apophatic theology by negation, is not how Westerners think. And for Westerners to even begin to understand it requires a lot of mind bending, a lot of work, maybe possibly a fair amount of THC. That's something like that would help, to get out of how we think. And so that actually has practical application. In that, here's a situation where, in that interview, Jay Dyer actually behaved like an adult. He doesn't normally behave like an adult in his normal life. That's what's weird about the man. And that's why I lost all respect for him, the way he responded when I even broached the idea of debating Nicaea 2. He responded like a 13-year-old on amphetamines. So I've got zero respect for Jay Dyer, because if you can behave in adult fashion one way and you can't the next day, you've got a real problem. That's problematic. So yeah, I watched it, and to answer that question while respecting Scripture is to step back and go, as you know, the argument in Romans chapter 4, and for those people who aren't tracking with us here, because I understand what you're asking. You can actually listen to Bob Sungenis enunciate this argument in our debate on justification from Long Island from somewhere in the early 2000s, very early 2000s, 2000, 2001, 2002, somewhere around there. The idea is that Abraham was justified multiple times. He was justified in Genesis 15, then he's justified in Genesis 22, in the offering of Isaac, which they try to draw from James chapter 2. But interestingly enough, none of them have any infallible interpretation of those texts to fall back on. They're fundamentally defending a view of justification and trying to make the scriptures to fit with that. The reality is that you cannot understand Romans 4 and 5 if you place the point of Abraham's justification outside of Genesis 15. Paul's entire argument in the rest of Romans chapter 4 collapses. Any Jewish opponent that knows Genesis would have torn Paul apart if Paul taught multiple justifications of Abraham. So you simply have to go, well, I can't take that perspective. I can't make the apostle contradict the apostle. So what do you do then with Hebrews? What do you do then? Well, what is Hebrews 11 talking about? Is Hebrews 11 identifying the point of initial justification for anybody? No. The issue, the Hebrews is like Romans. The theological part ends at the end of chapter 10. Chapter 11 begins the application part with the faith discussion, but not a faith discussion about justification. It's what true saving faith looks like and how it endures. Why? Because he's writing to the Hebrews. And he's saying to the Hebrews, endure in your faith. Endure the persecution you're going to experience. There's nothing to go back to. So here's what faith looks like. And so people getting sawed in half, that has nothing to do with the point of justification. It's what saving faith looks like and how it endures. So you have to allow Hebrews 11 to be Hebrews 11 in the context of Hebrews, just like you have to have Romans 4 being Romans 4 in the context of Romans. That's doing biblical theology, biblical exegesis, and allowing each of those texts to function in their immediate context. And then when you put them together, you also have to go, how do these fit together? And not confuse them, not conflate them. But you can't do that with a Jay Dyer, because he has an authority outside of this that determines what you have to see in the text to begin with. And of course, he might argue that, well, you've got that too because you've got your confessions. And I just go, except I am very consistent in making my confession subordinate to Scripture. And I get in trouble with the hyper-confessionalists for doing that. But this is why I have to do it. The hyper-confessionalists aren't out there dealing with the Jay Dyers. They're not out there dealing with the Bobson Genesis. So they can do their thing, and God bless you. But I try to be consistent at that point.
That's good. I appreciate that a lot, and thank you for answering my question. I really appreciate it.